The morning I walked into Dataflow Solutions in downtown Chicago, I had no idea that my 5-year journey with the company was about to take a turn that would expose the darkest corners of corporate nepotism. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I'm a senior data analyst who had just been promised the promotion of a lifetime until the boss's daughter decided my success was getting in the way of her personal agenda. The October wind was cutting through the streets of the Loop as I made my way to the 32nd floor of our glass tower. I'd been working at Dataflow for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior position through pure dedication and countless overtime hours. My performance reviews were spotless, my client satisfaction ratings were through the roof, and my direct supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, had been pushing hard for my promotion to team lead for the past 6 months. If you're enjoying this story about workplace corruption and want to hear more real-life experiences like this one, please subscribe to our channel to help us bring you more authentic stories. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from around the world. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I grabbed my usual coffee from the lobby cafe and headed up to my desk, reviewing the quarterly reports I'd prepared for the afternoon presentation. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represented 3 months of analyzing client data patterns, identifying cost-saving opportunities, and developing strategies that had saved the company over $2 million in operational expenses. The promotion to team lead wasn't just something I wanted. It was something I'd earned through measurable results and consistent performance. The office buzzed with its usual energy. Chicago's financial district always had this electric atmosphere, especially during earnings season. My colleagues were deep in their morning routines. Sarah from accounting was already on her second cup of coffee, discussing weekend plans with Mike from IT, while the marketing team huddled around their conference table, probably planning another client pitch. It felt like any other day in corporate America, where hard work was supposed to lead to advancement and merit-determined success. Around 10:30, Janet called me into her office. Her corner space overlooked the Chicago River, and on clear days like this one, you could see the boats making their way toward Lake Michigan. Janet had been my supervisor for 3 years, and she was one of those rare managers who actually fought for her team. In her mid-40s with graying hair that she wore in a professional bun, Janet had climbed the corporate ladder herself and understood the value of recognizing talent. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about the team lead position," she began, but her tone wasn't celebratory. Instead, there was a tension in her voice that I'd never heard before. She gestured for me to sit down, and I could see documents spread across her desk. My performance reviews, the cost-saving reports I'd submitted, and what looked like email printouts. "I've been fighting for your promotion for months," she continued, looking frustrated. "Your work on the Henderson account alone justified the advancement, and the client feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. But yesterday, I received some concerning information that I think you need to know about." My heart started racing. In 5 years at Dataflow, I'd never had a single complaint filed against me. My relationships with clients were professional and productive. My team collaboration was seamless, and I'd never violated any company policies. Whatever Janet was about to tell me, I knew it couldn't be about my performance. "It involves Stephanie Morrison," Janet said, referring to our CEO's daughter. Stephanie had joined the company about 8 months ago as a marketing coordinator, despite having minimal experience in our industry. At 26, she was younger than most of our entry-level employees, but her last name carried weight that her resume couldn't match. She was tall, blonde, and carried herself with the confidence that comes from never having to worry about job security. Janet handed me a printed email chain. These were forwarded to me by someone in IT who thought I should see them. "Apparently, Stephanie has been corresponding with several department heads about blocking your promotion." I stared at the papers, trying to process what I was reading. The emails were from Stephanie's company account, sent to various managers over the past 2 weeks. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding team lead position Marcus Thompson." As I read through them, my hands began to shake with a mixture of anger and disbelief. In the first email, Stephanie wrote, "I wanted to bring to your attention some concerns about Marcus Thompson's potential promotion to team lead. While his technical skills are adequate, I've observed behavior that raises questions about his leadership capabilities and cultural fit within our organization." The email went on to describe supposed instances of unprofessional conduct and difficulty working with diverse team members. None of these allegations were true, and more importantly, Stephanie had barely worked with me on any projects. Our departments occasionally collaborated, but we'd had maybe a dozen direct interactions in the 8 months since she'd started. The second email was even more damaging. I understand the urgency to fill the team lead position, but I believe we should consider external candidates who might bring fresh perspectives to the role. Marcus's approach to client relations, while effective in the short term, may not align with our company's evolving brand image and future strategic directions. What made these emails particularly infuriating was their calculated nature. Stephanie wasn't making direct accusations that could be easily disproven. Instead, she was planting seeds of doubt using vague language about cultural fit and brand image, corporate speak that was difficult to challenge but devastating to a career. "Janet, none of this is true," I said, looking up from the papers. "Stephanie and I have barely worked together. I can count on one hand the number of meaningful interactions we've had." "I know," Janet replied, her voice heavy with frustration. "That's what makes this so concerning. But here's where it gets worse." She handed me another document. "This morning, I received a memo from upper management stating that all promotion decisions are being reviewed for alignment with company values and long-term strategic goals. It's corporate language for putting your advancement on indefinite hold." The room felt like it was closing in around me. 5 years of hard work, countless late nights, missed family dinners, and weekend projects, all potentially derailed by someone who saw my success as an obstacle to their own agenda. But as I continued reading through the email chain, I discovered something that would change everything. The third email in the series contained a line that made my blood run cold. "I've been in discussions with several personal branding consultants about developing content that showcases our company's commitment to innovation and fresh thinking. Having the right people in visible leadership positions will be crucial for this initiative, particularly as I begin building my social media presence as a thought leader in the industry." Suddenly, everything made sense. Stephanie wasn't just trying to block my promotion out of spite or incompetence. She was planning to use her father's company as a platform to launch her personal brand as a business influencer, and she needed to control the narrative around who got promoted and why. My promotion, based purely on merit and performance, would undermine her story about bringing fresh perspectives and innovative thinking to the organization. "Janet, this isn't about my qualifications at all," I said, piecing together the puzzle. "She's trying to clear the field so she can promote her own agenda. Look at this line about personal branding consultants and social media presence." Janet leaned forward, studying the document more carefully. "You're right. This is about her building some kind of influencer platform using Dataflow as her launching pad. But Marcus, even knowing this, my hands are tied. Her father signs our paychecks, and challenging this directly could backfire on both of us." The next few hours were some of the longest of my professional life. I returned to my desk and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept racing through the implications of what I'd learned. Around me, my colleagues continued their daily routines, completely unaware that the merit-based promotion system they believed in was being manipulated by someone who saw the company as her personal playground. During lunch, I walked along the Chicago Riverwalk, trying to clear my head and figure out my next steps. The November air was crisp, and the city's energy usually helped me think through complex problems. But this wasn't a data analysis challenge or a client relations issue. This was about fundamental fairness and the integrity of the workplace I devoted 5 years of my life to building. As I watched the boats navigate the river, I realized that Stephanie's emails might actually be the key to solving this problem. She'd been careless in her communications, leaving a digital trail that revealed not just her intention to block my promotion, but her underlying motivations for doing so. If I could demonstrate that her objections were based on personal agenda rather than legitimate business concerns, I might be able to salvage the situation. That afternoon, I made a decision that would either save my career or end it entirely. I forwarded the email chain to Dataflow's legal department with a carefully worded message explaining my concerns about potential discrimination and asking for guidance on how to proceed. I copied Janet on the email, knowing that she would support my decision even if it put her in a difficult position. The response came faster than I expected. Within 2 hours, I received a call from Margaret Chun, Dataflow's general counsel. Margaret was in her 50s, with a reputation for being both brilliant and completely uncompromising when it came to legal compliance. She'd joined the company 3 years ago after leaving a prestigious law firm, and she'd already cleaned up several HR issues that could have resulted in expensive lawsuits. "Marcus, I need you to come to my office immediately," Margaret said, "and bring any documentation you have related to your promotion timeline and performance reviews." Margaret's office was on the 41st floor, in the executive section of the building. As the elevator climbed, I felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. I'd spent the last few hours gathering every piece of evidence I could find: performance reviews, client testimonials, project completion records, and documentation of the cost savings I generated for the company. When I walked into Margaret's office, I was surprised to find Janet already there, along with David Kim from Human Resources. The atmosphere was serious but not hostile, which gave me hope that this meeting might actually lead to a fair resolution. "Marcus, please sit down," Margaret began. "I've reviewed the emails you forwarded, and I have some serious concerns about the promotion review process. But before we discuss next steps, I need you to walk me through your interactions with Stephanie Morrison and provide context for these allegations." For the next hour, I detailed every professional interaction I'd had with Stephanie since she joined the company. The list was remarkably short: a few project handoff meetings, occasional discussions during company-wide presentations, and routine interactions at office events. In every case, our exchanges had been professional and unremarkable. "What's particularly concerning," Margaret said, taking notes throughout my explanation, "is that Ms. Morrison's emails suggest extensive observation of your work and behavior, but your account indicates minimal direct collaboration. This raises questions about the factual basis for her concerns." David from HR nodded in agreement. "I've also reviewed Marcus's personnel file, and there are no complaints, disciplinary actions, or negative feedback from clients or colleagues. His performance reviews are consistently excellent, and his supervisor has been advocating for his promotion for months." Margaret leaned back in her chair, clearly processing the implications of what she was hearing. "Marcus, I want you to understand that this situation involves some complex considerations. Ms. Morrison is the CEO's daughter, which creates certain sensitivities. However, that relationship doesn't give her the right to interfere with legitimate business decisions or make unfounded allegations against other employees." "What happens now?" I asked, trying to keep the anxiety out of my voice. "We're going to investigate this thoroughly," Margaret replied. "I'll be interviewing Ms. Morrison about the basis for her concerns, and I'll be reviewing the promotion decision process to ensure it's based on merit rather than external influences. In the meantime, I want you to continue performing your regular duties, but I also want you to document any interactions you have with Ms. Morrison going forward." As I left Margaret's office, I felt cautiously optimistic for the first time in days. The legal department was taking the situation seriously, and they clearly understood the implications of allowing personal agendas to override merit-based decisions. But I also knew that challenging the CEO's daughter was a risky move that could backfire in ways I hadn't considered. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I continued my regular work routine, but there was an underlying tension in the office that was difficult to ignore. Word had gotten around that something was happening with the team lead position, though most people didn't know the details. Stephanie seemed to be avoiding our department entirely, and I noticed that she'd become more cautious in her email communications. During this period, I began to observe the office dynamics more carefully than ever before. The corporate environment at Dataflow had always seemed straightforward, a meritocracy where hard work and results determined advancement. But now I was seeing the subtle power structures that existed beneath the surface. I noticed how certain employees seemed to have access to information before others, how some meetings happened behind closed doors without clear agendas, and how decisions that should have been transparent were often made through informal channels. My colleague Sarah from accounting approached me on Wednesday during lunch break. "Marcus, I heard through the grapevine that there might be some changes coming to leadership positions," she said, lowering her voice despite the busy cafeteria around us. "Is everything okay with your promotion?" Sarah had been with Dataflow for 7 years, and she'd seen her share of office politics. She was one of those employees who kept her head down and did excellent work, but she'd also witnessed enough questionable decisions to recognize when something wasn't right. "I can't really discuss the details," I replied, "but let's just say that merit-based decisions aren't always as straightforward as they should be." Sarah nodded knowingly. "I figured as much. Ever since Stephanie joined the marketing team, there have been some unusual dynamics. She seems to have influence that doesn't match her experience level, if you know what I mean." This conversation made me realize that I wasn't the only employee who had noticed Stephanie's disproportionate influence within the company. Other people had been observing the same patterns, but like me, they'd been hesitant to speak up about it. The fact that someone with Sarah's experience and perspective was willing to acknowledge these concerns validated my decision to involve the legal department. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visitor at my desk. Tom Martinez, one of the senior analysts from the West Coast Division, was in Chicago for quarterly meetings. Tom and I had collaborated on several cross-regional projects, and he'd always been impressed with my work quality and analytical approach. "Hey Marcus," Tom said, pulling up a chair beside my desk. "I heard some interesting conversations yesterday during the management meetings. Without getting into specifics, I wanted you to know that your reputation for solid work and integrity extends well beyond this office. Whatever situation you're dealing with, don't let anyone make you doubt your value to this company." Tom's words meant more to me than he probably realized. The fact that senior staff from other divisions had noticed my contributions and were willing to offer support, even indirectly, reinforced my confidence in the path I'd chosen. It also suggested that the investigation Margaret was conducting might have broader implications for how the company operated. That evening, I decided to review my entire employment history at Dataflow, looking for patterns I might have missed. I pulled out my performance reviews from the past 5 years, along with project completion records and client feedback summaries. What I discovered was a consistent trajectory of increasing responsibility and positive results that made Stephanie's allegations seem even more absurd. In my second year with the company, I'd identified a data processing inefficiency that was costing Dataflow approximately $50,000 quarterly in unnecessary server usage. My solution, implemented across all divisions, had saved the company over $400,000 in the first year alone. The following year, I developed a client retention analysis system that helped the sales team identify at-risk accounts before problems escalated, resulting in a 12% improvement in customer retention rates. These weren't minor contributions or routine accomplishments. They were significant improvements that had measurable impacts on the company's bottom line and operational efficiency. The documentation trail showed a clear pattern of innovation, reliability, and leadership that contradicted every allegation Stephanie had made in her emails. As I organized these materials, I also began to understand the broader context of what Stephanie had been attempting to do. Her personal branding strategy wasn't just about promoting herself. It was about repositioning Dataflow's narrative to support her image as an innovative leader. By blocking promotions of existing high-performers like myself, she could create space for her own initiatives and take credit for improvements that were actually the result of other people's work. On Friday afternoon, Janet called me into her office with news that would change everything. "Margaret wants to see both of us at 4 o'clock, she said. "I think they've completed their investigation." When we arrived at Margaret's office, the atmosphere was markedly different from our previous meeting. Margaret looked stern but satisfied, like someone who just solved a complicated puzzle. David from HR was there again, along with someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 30s wearing a sharp business suit. "Marcus, Janet, please sit down," Margaret began. "I'd like you to meet Lisa Parker from our external investigation firm. We brought her in to conduct an independent review of this situation, given the sensitivities involved." Lisa Parker looked like someone who didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Over the past 3 days, I've interviewed 12 employees about Marcus Thompson's performance and professional conduct. I've also reviewed his personnel file, client feedback, and project records. Additionally, I've spoken with Stephanie Morrison about the concerns she raised." "What did you find?" Janet asked. Ms. Morrison was unable to provide specific examples of the unprofessional behavior she alleged in her emails, Lisa replied. When pressed for details, she admitted that her concerns were based on general impressions rather than direct observation. Furthermore, none of the employees I interviewed had any negative feedback about Mr. Thompson's work or conduct. Margaret picked up the explanation. "More importantly, during our investigation, we discovered additional emails that Ms. Morrison hadn't shared with department heads. These emails reveal that her objections to Marcus's promotion were specifically related to her plans for developing a personal brand using Dataflow as a platform." Lisa handed me a folder containing printed emails. Ms. Morrison had been corresponding with external personal branding consultants about creating content that would position her as a thought leader in the industry. Her emails indicate that she viewed certain employee promotions as potentially undermining her narrative about bringing innovative thinking to the company. As I read through the additional emails, the full scope of Stephanie's agenda became clear. She hadn't just been trying to block my promotion, she'd been systematically planning to manipulate company personnel decisions to support her personal branding efforts. The emails revealed discussions about controlling the company narrative, positioning key players, and managing the leadership team composition to support strategic messaging. One email was particularly damning. "The current promotion timeline for the data analytics team doesn't align with my content strategy. I need to ensure that any leadership changes support the story I'm trying to tell about innovation and fresh thinking. The existing candidate, while technically competent, doesn't fit the image I'm trying to project for the company. This is unbelievable, I said, looking up from the documents. She was literally treating employee promotions like casting decisions for her personal brand content. Margaret nodded grimly. What makes this particularly serious is that Ms. Morrison used her position and family relationship to attempt to influence business decisions for personal gain. This violates several company policies, including our conflict of interest guidelines and professional conduct standards. What happens next? Janet asked. Ms. Morrison's employment with Dataflow has been terminated, Margaret announced. Additionally, we'll be implementing new policies to ensure that family relationships don't compromise our merit-based promotion processes. And Marcus, effective immediately, you're being promoted to team lead with a salary increase and expanded responsibilities. The relief I felt was overwhelming, but it was mixed with a strange sadness about how the situation had unfolded. I'd gotten the promotion I deserved, but it had come at the cost of exposing serious problems within the company's leadership structure. The fact that the CEO's daughter had felt entitled to manipulate personnel decisions for her personal benefit revealed cultural issues that went beyond this single incident. Over the following weeks, as I settled into my new role as team lead, I reflected on the lessons this experience had taught me. The most important realization was that workplace fairness isn't guaranteed. It has to be actively protected through transparent processes and accountability measures. If I hadn't been willing to challenge Stephanie's actions through proper channels, her manipulation would have succeeded, and my career would have been derailed by someone's social media ambitions. The promotion itself exceeded my expectations. My new role involved leading a team of 8 analysts, developing strategic initiatives for our largest clients, and representing the data analytics department in executive meetings. The salary increase allowed me to finally move to a better apartment in Lincoln Park and start seriously planning for my future. But more importantly, the experience had taught me to advocate for myself and others when faced with unfair treatment. The transition into leadership wasn't without its challenges. Managing former peers required a delicate balance of maintaining relationships while establishing new authority structures. My first major decision involved restructuring our project allocation system to better match analyst strengths with client needs. This change resulted in a 20% improvement in project completion times and significantly higher client satisfaction scores. One of my early initiatives as team lead was implementing a mentorship program for junior analysts. Having experienced firsthand how easily careers could be derailed by unfair treatment, I wanted to ensure that newer employees had strong advocates and clear advancement pathways. The program paired senior analysts with junior staff members, creating formal channels for career development and feedback that couldn't be manipulated by personal agendas. 3 months after the incident, I received an unexpected email from a former colleague who had left Dataflow shortly after Stephanie was hired. "I heard what happened with the CEO's daughter," she wrote. "I wanted to let you know that she tried similar manipulation tactics while I was there, but I didn't have the evidence or courage to challenge it. Thank you for standing up and exposing what was really going on." This message led to a series of conversations with other former employees who had similar experiences. Through LinkedIn and professional networks, I discovered that at least 4 other employees had left the company after encountering various forms of interference from Stephanie. One had been a marketing specialist whose creative campaigns were consistently rejected in favor of Stephanie's less effective but more camera-friendly initiatives. Another had been a project manager whose successful client relationships were undermined when Stephanie convinced management that external consultants could provide better results. These revelations made me realize that the problem had been much larger than my individual situation. Stephanie's behavior represented a systematic pattern of using family connections to override merit-based decisions across multiple departments. The fact that several talented employees had left the company rather than fight these battles meant that Dataflow had lost valuable human capital to support one person's personal branding ambitions. I decided to compile this information and present it to Margaret, not as an attack on Stephanie, but as evidence that the company needed stronger policies to prevent similar situations in the future. The document I prepared outlined the financial impact of losing experienced employees, the client relationship disruptions caused by unnecessary personnel changes, and the operational inefficiencies created when decisions were based on personal agendas rather than business needs. Margaret was grateful for this additional information, and it led to significant policy changes within Dataflow. The company implemented new conflict of interest guidelines specifically addressing family members in management positions, created anonymous reporting channels for employees to raise concerns about unfair treatment, and established regular reviews of promotion processes to ensure they remained merit-based. 6 months after my promotion, I had the opportunity to present our department's improved performance metrics to the executive team. The results spoke for themselves. Client retention had improved by 18%, project completion times had decreased by 22%, and customer satisfaction scores had reached their highest levels in company history. These improvements were the direct result of having leadership positions filled based on qualifications and performance, rather than personal connections or social media strategies. During the presentation, CEO Morrison approached me afterward with a comment that surprised me. "Marcus, I want you to know that the situation with my daughter was handled appropriately, and I appreciate how you managed the entire process professionally. The improvements your team has achieved prove that our promotion decisions should always be based on merit." This acknowledgement from the CEO himself validated everything I'd gone through. It also demonstrated that even family relationships couldn't override clear evidence of misconduct when proper procedures were followed. The fact that he could separate his personal relationship with his daughter from his responsibility as a company leader showed the kind of integrity that makes organizations successful in the long term. This message made me realize that Stephanie's behavior had likely affected other employees who hadn't been in a position to fight back. By documenting her emails and involving the legal department, I'd not only saved my own career but potentially prevented future incidents of nepotistic manipulation. The broader implications of this experience extend far beyond my personal situation. In an era where social media influence and personal branding have become increasingly important, there's a growing risk that people in positions of privilege will use their access to manipulate workplace decisions for content creation purposes. Companies need to be vigilant about protecting their merit-based systems from these kinds of external influences. This trend is particularly concerning in family-owned businesses or companies where nepotism already exists. When family members combine traditional nepotistic advantages with modern social media strategies, the potential for abuse becomes exponentially greater. They can manipulate personnel decisions not just for personal advancement, but for content creation, narrative control, and building their personal brands at the company's expense. My advice to anyone facing similar workplace manipulation is to document everything, follow proper channels, and don't be afraid to challenge unfair treatment even when it involves powerful people. The legal and HR systems exist to protect employees from exactly these kinds of abuses, but they can only work if people are willing to use them. The documentation aspect cannot be overstated. In my case, Stephanie's own emails provided the evidence needed to expose her agenda. Without that digital trail, the situation would have been much more difficult to prove. Always save important communications, keep records of your performance and contributions, and maintain professional relationships that can provide credible testimony about your work quality. It's also crucial to understand that challenging powerful people requires strategic thinking and patience. Going directly to the person causing problems or venting frustrations to colleagues rarely produces positive results. Instead, use established procedures, involve appropriate departments like legal or HR, and focus on policy violations rather than personal conflicts. Another important lesson from this experience is the value of allies within the organization. Janet's support as my supervisor was crucial, but equally important were colleagues like Tom Martinez who were willing to acknowledge my contributions and offer encouragement. Building positive relationships across the organization creates a network of people who can provide support when challenges arise. The economic impact of nepotistic manipulation extends beyond individual careers. When companies make personnel decisions based on personal branding strategies rather than merit, they lose valuable human capital, disrupt client relationships, and create operational inefficiencies that affect everyone. The cost of replacing experienced employees, retraining new staff, and rebuilding client trust can be enormous, especially when these problems could be prevented through proper oversight and accountability measures. Looking back on that October morning when I first walked into Dataflow with no idea what was coming, I'm grateful for how everything unfolded. The experience was stressful and challenging, but it ultimately led to a better outcome than I could have imagined. I learned that standing up for workplace fairness isn't just about protecting your own interests. It's about maintaining the integrity of systems that should reward merit rather than manipulation. The ripple effects of this incident continued long after Stephanie's termination. Dataflow's new policies regarding family member employment and conflict of interest became a model for other companies in our industry. Margaret presented our case study at several professional conferences, demonstrating how organizations can protect themselves from nepotistic abuse while maintaining family-friendly employment practices. More importantly, the cultural shift within Dataflow was palpable. Employees felt more confident that their contributions would be recognized fairly, and the company's reputation for ethical practices improved significantly. Client feedback consistently mentioned the professionalism and competence of our staff, and several new contracts were specifically attributed to our reputation for merit-based leadership. Today, as I lead my team through complex data analysis projects and help develop strategies that save our clients millions of dollars, I'm reminded daily of why merit-based promotions matter. The work we do requires skill, dedication, and expertise that can't be faked or manipulated through personal branding schemes. When promotion decisions are based on actual performance rather than personal agendas, everyone benefits: the employees, the clients, and the company itself. My current team includes analysts from diverse backgrounds and experience levels, all united by their commitment to excellence and professional growth. We've developed innovative solutions for Fortune 500 companies, improved operational efficiency for nonprofit organizations, and helped small businesses optimize their data-driven decision-making processes. None of this would have been possible if leadership positions were determined by social media strategy rather than analytical capability. The Chicago skyline looks different from my new office window, but the city's energy remains the same. Every morning, thousands of people make their way to work expecting that their efforts will be rewarded fairly and their careers will advance based on merit. This experience taught me that maintaining that expectation requires constant vigilance and occasional courage to challenge those who would undermine it for their own benefit. As I prepare for another day of leading my team, reviewing client proposals, and developing strategic initiatives, I carry with me the knowledge that workplace fairness is something worth fighting for. The systems that protect merit-based advancement only work when employees are willing to use them, and the integrity of professional environments depends on people being brave enough to speak up when those systems are threatened. The lesson from my experience isn't just about standing up to nepotism or challenging unfair treatment. It's about understanding that every workplace is a community that requires active participation to maintain its values and standards. When we allow personal agendas to override merit-based decisions, we don't just harm individual careers. We undermine the entire foundation of professional excellence that makes successful organizations possible.